Okay, now you're up, Scott. Solar farm.
Solar farm. So we had the meeting the day after that storm came through. We had them stop work simply because it was just not reasonable for them to continue when it was. But they did continue work once it dried up. At that time, that's when we started pressing the issues. As I said, we already reached out to them about questions, concerns with the soils. Once we started pressing that issue, we realized that they themselves were backing off of some of what the plan was and were going to ask for a little relief. Because that was tied to the planning, the zoning for that property is when we issued a stop work order. And this is just to give everybody a little general update to what occurred in the past couple of weeks. That plan, and I kind of explained it to the contractors because they had no idea on the previous plan approval portion of it that the township had conditions tied to that for zoning that improved the stormwater. And there was portions of that design that they had basically said they weren't sure if they could meet, which is why we issued the stop work, because it was tied to the zoning. Therefore, we weren't meeting their approved plans. We needed them to straighten that away before we move forward. As far as the construction end, they demonstrated or stated that they could still do that. They looked into it. I think the stop work was about 10, 11 days that they had to produce the information. We were still pressing them, even though we allowed them to go back to work to say the soils are still the concern. They then moved into doing the testing that they needed to demonstrate that. We met with DEP. I think there was probably about 30 people on a phone call this morning. And that was really bringing us up to speed of where they were on the soil testing. The short of it is everything they've done so far, and I think today they wrapped up, they were either almost double what the assumption was from the original design or more. And that includes going through and ripping the soil at least 20 inches deep in all the areas they are able to do that. When I say that, there's some areas where they encountered rock where we didn't want them to rip 20 inches deep and then create that issue on the site. But they are still doing at least an 8-inch till in the amended soils. So on top of the topsoil, they have spread, which they say is anywhere from, they claim 8 to 12 inches. But on the site where they will be tilling, they're doing at least 8 inches and adding sand and organic material. That will be their amended soil. There's about 106 acres of that they have to do that on. And we're still waiting for the final reports to come back for both the soil testing as well as that overall plan. But they have shown during the meeting that they are able to continue with that. So that really avoids the stop work order again that we had strictly for that compliance with the approved plan. So that's kind of a summary of where we're at there. DEP brought up several things that after their site inspection from June 9th, there wasn't a lot of compliance shown or provided. So they started showing some of that. I was really pushing one of the things I haven't seen is there's some grass coming on the site, but where there's not, stabilizing that area, getting grass to grow or whatever in the meantime until the permanent solution comes in. They're working towards that, but DEP pushed the same issue. So I think on our end, we're looking at the end of the week to have total compliance with what we're requesting. DEP tends to be a little more lenient on their deadlines. I don't think they're doing their inspection until next week for what their report is, but we're looking for more compliance sooner than that. That's where we are on the soils and some of the concerns we have with the design and whether they can or can't comply. We also issued a notice of violation. Jeff can speak to for the weeds.
Yeah, we had issued the final notice of violation. I posted that Friday a week ago. I think that would have been the 4th. We were given 7 days to bring the property into compliance. I was out Saturday evening, took pictures, and they're still in violation, or they were at that point in time, and we issued citations today. So I did see an email from Scott Luttrell today saying that everything has been cut now as of 4 o'clock this afternoon. I have not been out to the property since. I haven't had time to see if in fact they have complied with that. But the citations were dropped off at Judge Grath's office on 2:30, 3 o'clock today.
So we're looking for compliance with that. Again, they were asking how that ties in with the rest of the site work. That's your property maintenance ordinance, so it really didn't tie into a stop work order. There's the violations and penalties that go along with that separate from the site construction. I leave that to Jeff on that, but I know there was other concerns that came in and we discussed it with them, one being the complaint about a skid loader being back on the road. We weren't there when it occurred. I did find out in talking with them that they do have a skid loader with the brush on the front that they run up down the road once or twice a day just to make sure they're keeping it clean of the stone. I saw the skid loader, didn't see it operating, but that may be one of the reasons that it's there, but I can't say that it wasn't stopped in the road or not. We're trying to keep up on if there's something coming in, trying to talk to them about it and having them address that. Again, DEP did have concerns at pushing for compliance, but there's just not a lot behind it right now. But we'll see on that.
Backing up a little bit, are you confident that they'll be able to meet the infiltration goals?
What they showed today, as long as their reports back that up, they're at least, or they're greater than what the assumptions were in the report. So we'll have to pair that with what happens when they start tilling the site. I mean, that's test holes. They're doing 20-some test holes on the site. That's a good number, but it's a large site, so we'll be there observing it as it goes to make sure that it's
Because that
reaching everything.
Because we had a worse situation than we started with.
Agreed.
It doesn't look encouraging so far.
Yeah. I think we really stressed and they were trying to push back on the 20-inch ripping. But
Well,
I mean,
that's
they
key.
all but admitted they compacted more than what the detail showed, so it's required. I mean, they have to get in there, rip it, and then they till another 8 inches again on top of the ripping. So
Absolutely key.
So it's been very challenging for them to comply or even do what they say. Now we're at this point, they have reports of stuff. What, and maybe Chris has an answer for you, what happens if they do not comply, they don't rip it, they don't do? I mean, does that just come out of their escrow, we do it? Or what's our guarantee that this happens?
Well, there's a couple of different ways it can happen. There is an escrow for the construction. I don't know if that escrow included costs of ripping, though. But again, it's typically the construction. And, there was a lot of money for amended soils, but I don't know what the breakdown on that was. So hypothetically, that's a possibility. There's also notices of violation of the SALDO, the Subdivision Land Development Ordinance, and if you don't comply with the conditions of the permit, approval of the Subdivision Land Development Ordinance, you can be subject to fines, $500 a day. We'd have to issue an NOV and take them to the district justice to get those fines. There's also the zoning compliance, because as Scott said, this infiltration requirement is part of the zoning regulations. And if they don't comply with those regulations, then they can be subject to an NOV under the zoning ordinance and, be subject to $500 a day fines for violating the zoning ordinance. So there are at least 3 different ways we could go at it if they don't comply with what is required by the plan approval.
And how do we judge that?
Which portion of that?
That they've met those rates?
I mean, that's,
Are we taking their word for it?
well, what we're doing is having that third-party company come out. The name is Monarch Incorporated.
They're the ones that are doing the testing.
They're the ones separately coming in doing the testing. They're actually doing it for their own purposes at different levels just to see what's occurring. 8-inch, 10-inch, some 12, but all of them at least a 20-inch, which is what we're most concerned about since we're requiring to go to. But that is something that as they're doing it, we have spot check. Again, they've kind of been rushing to get that in as much as they can. But really, it is the infiltration rates that they're taking, certifying.
So it is a
They're
third
putting their
party
seal
that's
on
doing that.
It is. And it is different than the original. The original was Kimley Horn. The engineering company had somebody separate. They're coming in and doing this now.
So someone has to be accountable for that.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, yes, that company is certifying those results.
Right.
But again, that comes hand in hand with when they start ripping the soils to see what's going on and how that's.
And some
How that
sort of
goes.
it's going to be absolutely crucial. It's going to make it work.
I just want to make sure we're protected, 'cause I don't think we take that seriously.
Yeah, I think we need to look at procedures and where they land on that end of it too.
Yeah, they seem to have a bit of a communications problem. The right hand doesn't know the left hand, so.
Typically, you have the periodic escrow requests for drawdown. They haven't done that. I think they're trying to make sure everything goes smoothly before they do so. I think there's reason to hesitate on that anyway, to what extent you could. But, yeah, they're moving into that soil ripping and starting that to at least look through a couple rows. The end of this week, I think it is, somewhere around Thursday, Friday. But once they start, then they'll start getting into the full site. So I don't think them attempting to do all the ripping and all of that is a worry. I think they're gonna do that. It's just a matter of following through and trying to get up and running. It's the big concern.
Of course, the other big issue is the grass. Bad
Yeah.
precedents. Keep an eye on that for me. Because we can't be giving, they can't be issuing NOVs to other people in the neighborhood.
With that being
People
said,
drive by there and they go, hey, what's going on here, guys?
okay, but let's clarify one thing with that. With that being said, I think we need to hold them to the same standard that we hold everybody else.
Exactly.
And I think what I'm looking for is compliance in the area, I'd say maybe a little bit past the main discharge from the site down towards the end of the guide rail. But if I look, as you go up the rise a little bit, on the left-hand side, they have a bank that has higher growth on it. But I also see that identical growth both across the street and also down the street farther. So we are not issuing notices of violation to those property owners. So I think, I feel that I don't want to issue an NOV to them for having that same growth in the eastern end of the property. Or
Which
southern
is
end.
technically a waterway. That's you're referring to the waterway.
No, even closer to Fleetwood,
Okay.
even onto, the Walker property and down farther. So there are areas that have that same type of vegetation. They're active farms, that we're not going after for that. But I think on the upper end towards the substation, it's a little bit different animal there.
Yeah, that's really part of the facility.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that area, I don't want to see high weeds at if there's a utility pole laying on the ground or the silt socks, I think that all should be trimmed down.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's a guy going out there with a, weed whacker, how he's doing it, but it needs to be done.
Yeah.
And along the guide rail where it's growing up through it, it needs to be cleared.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to
Clarify
clarify.
perception. Yeah.
Correct.
I can say that they've gone to great lengths to mow just over the weekend they're working on it, and they were weed whacking around the fence and stuff. They're really trying to get everything down.
I understand they are.
The state has to maintain the guardrails. They always did, but they're not doing it. They used to spray it to kill it, but they're not doing it.
Okay.
Talk to the state. Yeah.
State's not great on cutting weeds anymore.
No,
Anymore.
not great up too much.
They would tell you there's no budget. I heard that once, I heard it 100 times. We don't have a budget.
But I do want that end of the property, I want it looking good. And I think that is in their best interest, and that's what we're,
That's what I tried to convey to them last week when we met.
oh, you should have heard the conversation I had with them the week before,
Yeah.
but didn't go over too well.
Yeah. but I tried to tell them it's in your best interest.
Yep. Told them, I don't care what's on the back of the property. Do what's up front.
Yeah, but one,
Geez, some common sense.
yeah,
To kind of bring it to a head, we're waiting on their reports for the soils. The final report, we've seen some of the results. Some of the report we're waiting on from them. Technically they are changing the soil amendment. That was what was discussed at the meeting, so the DEP in our office, Gary was on the call as well, just to make sure everybody was on board. We were hesitant to give an answer until we knew whether or not DEP was going to approve their holding the permit. We wanted to see how they approached it, as well as see the soil results before we start amending anything. DEP was open to both the 20-inch tilling and the results, as well as the change to the soil amendment. For a reason, I mean, they back up that there is a reason that they can do so, and it does work out. I mean, again, as I said, I've left that soil amendment and the review of that stormwater design to Gary. And first glance, cursory review, he said it looks good, finish it up and send it to us. So we're waiting on that. They're starting to work towards that tilling in between the solar panels right now. And that, just not to keep going, but one of the questions DEP had, and I don't think they were 100% clear on this, at least the person that was on the meeting, they did take into consideration that there's about a 6-7 foot pass that the panels will be at, even when they do this work. So when they did their design, they accounted for not having that 6-7 foot pass, and they're only doing the, say, 7 or 8 foot between the panels. So it looks like they're trying to till the whole area, even underneath. They will for the amended soils, but the tilling and ripping is going to be in between the panels for that infiltration. That was ultimately the design. It came up as a question of DEP, so just to clarify, if anybody sees that, that's the intent of the design. But again, we're watching it as they move forward. So.
I think they should just be clear that we're not going to settle for anything less than the intended results under any circumstances. Because up to this point, they have tried to push us in every direction. That's not happening, and we will use every ounce of leverage that we have to make sure it's what they agreed on in the first place.
Understood.
we're not looking for anything above and beyond. We just want to what they originally agreed to.
I just got one question. The 20-inch ripping thing, was that set in stone from day one, or where did that number come from? I mean, that is really deep. We have a ripper, I know we can't even go that deep.
That was kind of the concern, is they were backing off from the 20-inch rip,
Yeah, because our wires are down there.
but it was their design. It was.
They said they can go to.
The designer put that on the drawing and said, in a situation where the compaction is heavy,
Right.
then it needs to be the 20-inch rip. And ultimately, when they graded out the site, they graded it and then they added the topsoil back. So when they rolled that, they put 8 inches of topsoil back on it, there was already compaction. Even if it was only 2 inches, the heavy compaction is considered 8 or greater. So that's why it was, well, guys, this is your design, your construction. Now your detail shows the 20-inch rip. Could there be consideration there? Possibly, but again, they had it on there for a reason, and
I just wanted to come up with that, that's awful deep.
yeah, yeah, it was the original design and what the safe answer was if there was heavy compaction.
We're not asking any more than what they agreed to
Okay.
from the rip, from the beginning.
Yeah, the contractor had a lot of pushback on us saying that it's the township's request to go 20 town, and we kept saying, this is your design. This was the design that you guys got approved and
Yeah, we didn't design.
brought it through, so.
Yeah,
and
well,
that
they
was-
created that problem when they compacted it. So they want to make sure they get that hard pan broken up, or the water's not going to go down there.
Right. And
So the goal is
bring
to
it up
get,
to some point.
get the infiltration rates that they agreed to, so. But you're right, that's steep.
Especially when it's big panels.
Any other questions on that part?
As far as I'm concerned. Everything else good.
I'm good.